This is a short Japanese classic that many people in Japan first meet in school. Although it was written for young readers, many adults still come back to it and find different meanings in its quiet, bittersweet story. As you listen, you might simply enjoy the calm rhythm of the tale, or you might notice your own thoughts and feelings about the fox and the human characters. Gon, the Little Fox, Nankichi Niimi. This is a story I heard when I was little from an old man in our village named Mohei. Long ago, near our village, there was a place called Nakayama where a small castle stood. They say a lord called the Lord of Nakayama lived there. A little way off from Nakayama, deep in the mountains, there lived a fox named Gon. Gon was a lonely little fox. He had dug a den for himself in a forest thick with bracken and lived there. Day and night he would sneak out into the nearby village and do nothing but mischief. He would go into the fields and dig up sweet potatoes, set fire to piles of drying rapeseed stalks, or yank down the strings of hot red peppers hanging behind the farmers' houses. He did all sorts of things. One autumn, it had been raining for 2 or 3 days in a row. During that time, Gon could not go outside and just crouched in his den. When the rain finally stopped, Gon felt relieved and crawled out of the hole. The sky was clear and bright, and the cry of a shrike rang sharp through the air. Gon went as far as the bank of the little river that flowed by the village. Raindrops still glittered on the tips of the pampas grass all around. The river usually did not have much water, but after 3 days of rain, it was suddenly swollen. Clumps of pampas grass and bush clover that were never under water in ordinary times were now knocked sideways and churned about in the muddy yellow current. Gon walked downstream along the muddy path. Then he noticed someone standing in the river, doing something. Gon crept quietly into the thick grass so as not to be seen, and watched from there. That is Hyoju, Gon thought. Hyoju had his tattered black clothes hitched up and was standing in the water up to his waist, shaking a net called a harikiri to catch fish. On the side of his head, where he had tied his headband, a round bush clover leaf stuck fast like a big black mole. After a while, Hyoju lifted up the very back part of the harikiri net, the part shaped like a bag, from the water. Inside it were tangled roots of grass, leaves, and rotten bits of wood, all mixed together. But here and there, something white was shining. These were the bellies of thick eels and big fish called kisu. Hyoju dumped the eels and kisu into his creel together with the trash. Then he tied up the mouth of the bag again and let it back into the water. After that, Hyoju climbed out of the river, carrying the creel, put it down on the bank, and then, as if to look for something, ran off upstream. As soon as Hyoju was gone, Gon sprang out of the grass and ran up to the creel. He suddenly felt like playing a trick. Gon grabbed the fish out of the creel, one after another, and threw them with a plop into the river, downstream of where the harikiri net was set. Each fish made a splash as it slipped into the cloudy water. At the very end, he tried to grab the fat eel, but it was so slippery that he could not hold it with his paws. Gon grew impatient and stuck his head right into the creel, clamped the eel's head in his mouth and bit down. The eel cried out once, then coiled itself tightly around Gon's neck. Just then, Hyoju shouted from the other side, "Hey, you thieving fox!" Gon jumped up in surprise. He tried to fling off the eel and run, but the eel stayed wrapped around his neck and would not let go. With the eel still twisted around him, Gon leapt sideways out of the grass and ran for his life. Near his burrow, under a dogwood tree, he turned and looked back, but Hyoju was not chasing him. Gon gave a sigh of relief, bit through the eel's head, and finally pulled it off. He laid it on top of some leaves in the grass outside his den. About 10 days later, as Gon was passing behind the farmhouse of a peasant named Yasuke, he saw Yasuke's wife in the shade of a fig tree, blackening her teeth with ohaguro. When he went round the back of the blacksmith Shimbei's house, Shimbei's wife was combing out her hair. Gon thought, "Something is going on in the village. I wonder what it is. An autumn festival, maybe. If it were a festival, I ought to hear drums and flutes. And first of all, there should be banners raised at the shrine." Thinking about this as he walked, he suddenly found himself in front of Hyoju's house, the little broken-down house with the red well out front. Inside the small, crumbling house, a crowd of people had gathered. Women wearing their best clothes, with hand towels tucked at their waists, were tending a fire in the stove by the front door. Something was simmering and bubbling in a big pot. "Ah, it is a funeral," Gon thought. "I wonder who in Hyoju's family has died." Afternoon had passed. Gon went to the village graveyard and hid in the shade behind the 6 stone Jizo statues. The weather was fine, and in the distance, the roof tiles of the castle glittered in the sun. In the graveyard, red cluster amaryllis bloomed in a long band like a strip of scarlet cloth. From the direction of the village, a bell began to ring. Clang, clang. It was the signal that the funeral procession was leaving. Before long, Gon could see people in white funeral clothes appearing here and there in the distance. Their voices came closer. The procession entered the graveyard. Where the people passed, the cluster amaryllis lay crushed underfoot. Gon stretched up on tiptoe to look. Hyoju was carrying the memorial tablet, dressed in white ceremonial kamishimo. The face that was usually as ruddy and lively as a red sweet potato looked somehow withered today. So, Gon thought, it is Hyoju's mother who has died. He drew his head back down. That night, in his burrow, Gon thought to himself, Hyoju's mother must have been lying in bed and said she wanted to eat eel. That is why Hyoju brought out the harikiri net to catch some. But I played that trick and took the eel away. Because of that, Hyoju could not let his mother eat the eel. And she died just like that, I am sure. She must have died thinking, "Ah, I want to eat eel. I want to eat eel." I should never have played such a prank. Hyoju was rinsing barley at the red well. Until now, he had lived in poverty with only his mother, and with his mother gone, he was completely alone. Hyoju is alone now, just like me, thought Gon, watching from behind the storage shed. Gon left the side of the shed and started off in the other direction when he heard someone somewhere calling out, selling sardines. "Cheap sardines, fresh sardines, lively sardines!" Gon ran toward the voice full of energy. At that moment, Yasuke's wife called out from the back door, "Give me some sardines!" The sardine seller left his handcart with its basket piled high with fish by the roadside, scooped up shining sardines in both hands, and carried them into Yasuke's house. In that brief moment, Gon snatched 5 or 6 sardines from the basket and dashed back the way he had come. He ran to the back door of Hyoju's house, threw the sardines into the house, and then raced off toward his burrow. When he looked back from the top of the hill on the path, he could still see Hyoju, small in the distance, rinsing barley by the well. Gon felt he had done one good deed as the first atonement for the eel. The next day, Gon gathered a heap of chestnuts in the hills, carried them in his arms, and went to Hyoju's house. Peeking in from the back door, he saw Hyoju sitting over his midday meal, holding his rice bowl in his hand, lost in thought. To Gon's surprise, there was a scratch on Hyoju's cheek. As Gon wondered what had happened, Hyoju began to mutter to himself, "Who on earth threw those sardines into my house? Because of that, I was taken for a thief, and the sardine seller gave me a terrible beating." Gon thought, "This is bad." So poor Hyoju had been punched by the sardine seller and left with a wound like that. Thinking this, Gon slipped quietly around to the shed and left the chestnuts at its entrance before going back. The next day, and the day after that, Gon gathered chestnuts and brought them to Hyoju's house. On the following day, he brought not only chestnuts, but also 2 or 3 pine mushrooms. It was a beautiful moonlit night. Gon went out to wander about. After he had gone a little way, passing below Lord Nakayama's castle, it seemed that someone was coming along the narrow path ahead. He could hear people talking. The pine crickets were chirping, "Chinchirorin, chinchirorin." Gon hid at the side of the road and stayed very still. The voices came closer and closer. They were 2 farmers, Hyoju and Kasuke. "Say, Kasuke," Hyoju said. "Yeah?" "You know, something very strange has been happening to me lately." "What is it?" "Ever since my mother died, I do not know who it is, but every single day someone leaves chestnuts or matsutake mushrooms for me." "Huh. Who would do that?" "That is just it. I have no idea. They put them there when I am not looking." Gon followed after the 2 of them. "You sure?" "Of course I am. If you think I am lying, come see tomorrow. I will show you the chestnuts." Well now, strange things do happen, do they not? After that, the 2 walked on in silence. Kasuke suddenly glanced back. Gon started and shrank down where he stood. Kasuke did not notice Gon and kept right on walking. When they reached the house of a farmer named Kichibe, they went inside. From within came the pon, 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 pon sound of a wooden temple drum. Light shone against the paper window screens, and the shadow of a big shaven priest's head moved back and forth. Thinking, they must be chanting prayers, Gon crouched down beside the well. After a little while, 3 more people came together and went into Kichibe's house. The sound of a sutra being chanted drifted out. Gon stayed crouched beside the well until the chanting of the sutra was over. Hyoju and Kasuke started back home together again. Gon followed after them, wanting to hear what they would talk about, stepping on Hyoju's shadow as he went. When they came in front of the castle, Kasuke suddenly spoke. "About what you were saying before. I am sure that must be the work of the gods." "Huh?" Hyoju was startled and looked at Kasuke's face. "I have been thinking about it ever since. No matter how I look at it, that is not something a person would do. It must be the gods. The gods feel sorry that you are all alone now, so they are giving you various things." "Do you really think so?" "I do. So you should thank the gods every day." "Yeah," Gon thought. "Well, this is no good at all. I am the one who brings him chestnuts and matsutake, and yet he does not thank me at all. He thanks only the gods. That is not worth it for me at all." The following day as well, Gon set out for Hyoju's house with chestnuts in his arms. Hyoju was in the shed, twisting rope. So Gon slipped quietly into the house through the back door. Just then, Hyoju happened to lift his face. A fox was just stepping into the house. It was that same fox, Gon, who had stolen his eel the other day, now come again to play some trick. "All right," Hyoju muttered. He stood up, took the matchlock gun hanging in the shed, and loaded it with powder. Silencing his footsteps, he crept closer, and, just as Gon was about to step out through the doorway, fired with a boom. Gon fell with a thud. Hyoju ran over to him. When he looked inside the house, he noticed a neat little pile of chestnuts set down on the earthen floor. "Oh," Hyoju exclaimed in surprise, dropping his gaze to Gon. "Gon, was it you? Were you the one who has been bringing me chestnuts all this time?" Gon, limp, eyes closed, gave a faint nod. Hyoju let the matchlock fall from his hands with a crash. A thin blue smoke was still drifting from the mouth of the barrel. Thank you for listening until the end. For anyone who loves Japanese literature or just wants calm readings to help with focus, relaxation, or sleep, this channel is for you. Please like the video and subscribe.